practice session earlier this morning, getting set to qualify. Now for race number 1. There you see the championship point standings. Parker Thompson from Red Deer, Alberta, 237 points. Big gap over second place, Renus VK. Carlos Cunha, who we saw have issues in turn number 4 in that first practice session, currently P3. David Malukas, P4. Harrison Scott, 5th in the point standings. And it's Oliver Askew, Stingray Robb, Robert McGinnis, another driver who had issues this morning, Nikita Listoshkin, and Andres Gutierrez, 10th in the point standings. The track crew cleaning up after our Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge practice session, and we're joined in the booth by the voice of this Mazda Road to Indy program, Rob Howden. Good morning, Rob. Any updates on the 2 cars we saw go around, or are we going to have to wait and see?
Well, Carlos Cunha, I wasn't able to find out what was going on with Carlos, but I believe his car pushing off to the mock grid. Cape Motorsports going to work, though, on the car of Nikita Listoshkin. Damage to the entire left side of the car, both left front and left rear. I don't think Nikita's going to make it out here to this qualifying session. They're thrashing on it back in the Intercare Center right now. It's trying to see if they can get it done, but
a lot of damage.
It's a lot of damage and such a quick turnaround. You know, they were on the track at 8 o'clock. They finish up at 8:25. They get the car back. We're talking about, stripping that thing down, getting the entire suspension both sides off. The guys are working hard, but with less than, an hour and a half to get back onto the racetrack, just not able to get him to the mock grid on time.
So potential race number 2, Nikita will be fine.
Oh, yeah.
Race number 1, it's going to be back in the field starting, and certainly going to be a bigger trial than race number 2 potentially could be.
Most definitely. He'll be a guy to watch trying to come from the tail of the field in race 1. But again, as well, qualifying this afternoon at 3:55 for race number 2. So he will get a chance to get back on track. But
they'll have it fixed by then.
They'll have it. Yeah. It'll be done in an hour from now. They're just not going to, I don't think, able to get him out for this qualifying session. And again, on a track like this, Michael, a temporary circuit, you cannot afford to lose any track time. As this track continues to evolve, the grip goes down. Temperature's going to come up throughout the day here, throughout the weekend. Every session is so critical to getting as much data as you can.
Now we'll see the Verizon IndyCar Series. We will see the NASCAR Pinty Series. We'll see the USF 2000 Series one more time. By the time Nikita Listoshkin comes out later on this afternoon, there will be 3-4 other sessions happening. The track will be completely different than what Nikita saw this morning.
So much more grip. Number one, the rubber's going to go down. Remember, they were here at 8 o'clock in the morning. They were out there cleaning this racetrack off for all intents and purposes, right? They're the first guys to get around here, get a feel for the new asphalt as well coming into turn number 1. I did have a chance to talk to a couple of drivers who ran here last year. Overall, they say that the run to turn number 1 is fantastic. In USF 2000, they're braking 50 yards deeper.
Wow.
But you got to watch again. You're going to, they're carrying more speed into that corner as well. So the bumps are fixed. It's turn 8, which is tough. You feel like you can brake deeper in turn number 8, but there's a couple of big bumps when you get to the concrete on the inside of turn number 8, that right-hander that leads back over to the kind of the pit lane 9, 10, 11 complex, the kind of chicane coming back out here, the left, right, left. And they're saying you come through there and it starts bouncing. All you're doing is waiting to get back to the pavement on the other side to see what the car will do.
It's interesting, and we watched through all since last we saw you, obviously the USF 2000 session, but even that Porsche session. We're seeing a shot from turn 10, looking back towards that turn number 8 complex. And until you really see that, you don't realize how tight that really is. Coming off a very tough turn number 8 now, mind you, into a very tight complex, potential drivers peeling off. So if you want to drift out there could be somebody blowing the car up. You really have to be on your toes when you come out of that final turn. And then, as you said, 9, 10, and this really tight turn number 11. I know a lot of people were concerned about it when that first change was made, but I really think it's really added even another layer of complexity to this race course.
In talking with the drivers, they told me that it seems like 11 is a little more wide open than it was last year. They're able to roll some more speed, so they've opened that up a little bit. Drivers heading out, a number of them with the Sticker Cooper tires on, fresh rubber to get things underway here. Qualifying key in Toronto. There are some facilities we go to, Michael, where qualifying is important but not overly crucial. You can start 10th, and work your way to the front. At a Road America, for example, lots of opportunities to pass. Here in Toronto, the precarious street circuit, turn 3, turn 1, maybe turn 8, not a lot of places to pass, so the better you can qualify, the better it is. Chris Wright coming out here, the number 78. That thing's not...
That doesn't sound good at all.
Not able to get the thing to spool up right now, so Chris Wright...
There you go. Well, he's trying.
There we go. He was just kind of putting his way out here.
Yeah, we'll talk again about turn 11. I don't know officially, but just visually, and again, it's been a year, it looks like that the wall kind of extends a little deeper in. That it was really a tight turn, and they really cornered that off a lot on that outside line. It looks like the drivers have a better opportunity to let that car swing out a little bit.
Such an important part of the racetrack. You've got to get that great exit at turn number 8. You're rolling through there over the concrete, letting the car reset when it gets back to the pavement. You're rolling back on the throttle, and then it's that rhythm section, Michael, right? Turn you come through, you got the kind of the right-hand turn number 9, the left off-camber turn 10, back to what now is a more open turn number 11. Such an important part of the racetrack if you want to try to make a pass down in turn number 1.
Harrison Scott, David Malukas, they're running together, making their way through turn number 1 right now.
We'll give a hello to everybody tuned in to roadtoindy.tv, or whether you're on a number of the other streaming options, Race Control on IndyCar.com or through the ProMazda.com website. Again, hello. Michael Young alongside Rob Howden as we give you guys Pro Mazda Qualify. Quick turnaround, Michael, as we said, 8 o'clock this morning. They came out and cleaned the track off for us. Right back at it here at 10:05, so they really lump a lot into the morning of Friday's action.
Usually it's the USF 2000 series that have to really get after it, but this weekend it's the Pro Mazda series. They had one practice session. They're qualifying for both races today.
Agreed. It's a tough one for these guys, and again, we can't talk enough about, big slide coming out. That's Carlos Cunha.
Woo.
That caught us off guard. Coming out of turn number 11 here onto the front straightaway, Carlos Cunha stepped on the loud pedal. We're talking 280 Mazda horsepower, spinning those rear wheels. When you've got fresh rubber on like he did, coming out with Sticker Cooper tires, you've got to give them a couple laps to get the optimum operating temperature before they're going to start to grab. We saw what happens when you get on it too early.
I don't know what his heart rate was, but I know what mine is right now. That back end stepped it to the right, and he turned it to the right to save it. That was a nice job by Carlos Cunha, but man alive, it's way early in the session, and having that issue early, the last thing you want to do is have problems now.
I was going to say, how would that have changed his day?
Oh, yeah.
Getting in the wall. They would have had the time to fix it until this afternoon, like just before 4 o'clock, when they're back on the racetrack for qualifying for race number 2. But, man, if he got into the wall there, that would have changed things for Carlos Cunha. As you had mentioned, he is in the championship chase still, Michael. I think he's 3rd or 4th in the points. This is a guy that needs a result. He hasn't won yet. He was kind of the best of the rest last year behind Anthony Martin and Victor Franzoni in the championship, the final year with the old Pro Mazda chassis. He's back this season, a very, very impressive, very talented young Brazilian. I like Carlos Cunha a lot. Got a lot of personality. Make sure you get a chance to go talk to them when they have their autograph session. Indy Lights and Pro Mazda will have a combined autograph session this afternoon, or later on this morning. There's Antonio Serravalle out there as well, the 15-year-old driver, youngest pilot in this Pro Mazda Championship from Unionville, Ontario. Another one of the Canadians here this weekend for the A-Team, the exclusive Autosport team out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. A couple of Canadian drivers, and Parker Thompson and Antonio Serravalle. Those two drivers on different parts of their career now. It's the 4th season for Parker Thompson, leading the points now in Pro Mazda. Antonio just fresh, right out of karting, his first year in cars. Everywhere we go, Antonio Serravalle goes quicker and quicker and quicker every session. This year's all about him learning the car, the team, the series, and the racetracks. He's done a great job thus far.
David Malukas swinging a little wide there at the exit of turn number 11. I know we spent a lot of time looking at the entire track, watching monitors, but just watching turn number 11, how many drivers get those little yips as we see Parker Thompson come out right against that wall. Such an important corner. And you know how much they're pushing that car. To see them that close, and to see about the 3/4 way point, the exit of that turn, you just see those small little twitches. It just gets your heart racing.
Well, the crazy thing is turn number 10, the right-hander that leads to the left-hand 11, is an off-camber corner. So the car's already kind of fallen away. There's a curb on the inside that they'll jump over top of that curb, kind of roll up on top of it. The car's totally weighted to the left. Then they come back out. They're on the throttle, and it's a long, sweeping left-hander, rather. And they're just, they're trying to roll that throttle on, and there's a little bump there. And, man, if the car just gets unsettled a little bit, all it's got – remember, they're almost touching the wall.
Right.
So if they let it hang out a couple extra inches, that's when they start white walling it. That's when things could get hairy. We've seen drivers in this Mazda Road to Indy in the wall before. It's a precarious part of this racetrack.
The only thing I think I could compare it to, for those who don't race, is coming on an exit ramp. And you're really flying down the highway, and it's a 35, and you're doing maybe 65, and you start feeling it, and that sensation of, I could lose control in any second.
That's a great analogy. True enough. You get in there, you can feel the car wanting to push a little bit. You're off the throttle a little bit, starts to get a little wild. Great shot here, Michael, of the Cooper Tire corner. That was turn number 5. You see the drivers coming in there up on top of the curbing there, really attacking that corner. It's another one of the corners here with that concrete patch. You can see it here in turn number 3. You come all the way down the straightaway. You're hard on the brakes. You're turning in. You lose all grip on the front end when it transitions onto that concrete. You kind of have to wait for the car to reset on the other side. You get past the concrete, back onto the pavement again, and boom, those front tires grab. You have to be ready. And one of the things about Toronto, we talk about the fact that some of these street courses, you have to have quick hands if you have trouble. But the key is you want to slow your hands down. You don't want to be sawing on the wheel. You want to be able to have that car. Nice slow hands. Quick hands if you have to save, something's happened. But otherwise, you just got to be slow. And engineers and coaches always try to get their drivers to slow down their input. You get too aggressive, too twitchy, that's when the car gets unsettled. Here again, another shot coming through the Cooper Tire corner. That's turn number 5. You can watch these drivers up and over the curbing, Michael. We talked about the fact that you're not allowed to cut the inside there. It's available, but they've got it pushed back so you have a better visual. You're able to see through the corner. But as these drivers work their way out of turn 3, up over the left-hand, turn 4, it's a short chute right on the other side of BMO Field. You can see them get across that concrete, and you'll watch the car just kind of drift. They've set the car. It's not even rotated. They've set it, and they're just waiting for it to come across the other side.
Well, you just see every car through every portion or most of the cars, just those little twitches here and there, pushing so very hard in this qualifying session for race number 1. And just to touch back on the exit ramp analogy, not that we encourage that type of behavior by anyone.
No.
Please.
And you and I have never charged an exit ramp
ever. We do not encourage that type of behavior. Please. Oh, we have somebody swing wide there in turn number 5.
Looks like one of the RP Motorsports drivers are probably either Raul Guzman or Harrison Scott pushing. And again, that's what they're doing here. They're pushing hard. Overcooked a little bit. But again, as you said, yes, do not ever try to go that fast off an on-ramp, or off-ramp, rather, and don't do that tonight to get a feel for it.
Especially on the Gardner, please don't do that. No, that'd be bad.
Rinus VK, the Dutch competitor up top, he won.
Not that you could get that fast on the Gardner anyhow, but
not going home tonight. That's for sure.
Certainly
maybe
not.
on the weekend.
Right. Okay.
Tonight, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair
Stop
enough.
And go doesn't work.
Right.
Rinus VK, fastest time thus far, 0.02 of a second quicker than the point leader, Canadian Parker Thompson. VK, the number 2, a 108.539. Thompson, a 108.568. Just 200ths of a second. 28 thousandths of a second. Parker Thompson, a little quicker last time by. He's still P2. Winner from the last event at Road America. In fact, he swept the weekend, both main events. His first victories in the Mazda Road to Indy. David Malukas in the 3rd spot. Robert McGinnis in 4th. 5th is Stingray Robb. 6th, Andres Gutierrez. 7th, Oliver Askew. 8th is Raul Guzman. 9th, Carlos Cunha in pit lane now as well. Antonio Serravalle in 10th. Good run for Antonio. Again, 15 years of age, right out of shifter kart racing. Antonio's got a lot of friends, family, and sponsors here this weekend. Looking good so far out of the box. They'll roll down out of turn 11 into turn number 1. Think about that, Michael. Coming back to your hometown. You've raced a couple of races to start the season. You're getting a feel for this car, but you got to come midway through the season to your hometown. This is the race for you. This is where you just want to get out there and put on a good show.
And growing up knowing the importance of this race, and then to come here knowing the pressure, you just put additional pressure on yourself. And sometimes that really separates the men from the boys, if you will. If you're able to come into a venue that you know you're supposed to do well and you want to do well, and then you're able to execute, that is the key. I will say I saw Rinus VK. We had a great shot of Rinus going through turn number 11. So watching him enter that turn on the video screens and then turning and watching him exit, it kind of completed the corner for me. How much it's indescribable the speed they carry through such an extremely tight portion of this racetrack.
One thing we do want to mention as well is that the existing track record for Pro Mazda in the old race car, 110.76. We're at a 18.3. We're 2.5 seconds faster than the existing track record. This new Tatis-built PN18 race car with 280 horsepower from Elite Engines, man, this thing is an absolute rocket. And what it's done, Michael, it's even improved the jump from USF 2000 into Pro Mazda and really setting these kids up to be awesome in Indy Lights once they get there. This car is that much faster. It's so much more like driving the Dallara that we have in the Indy Lights series. So I'm excited to see what happens to the drivers that move from Pro Mazda into Indy Lights, to see how quickly they're able to pick things up.
We hear that, right? Got a lot of drivers that are in the Indy Lights cars saying, the transitions, we've talked with several of the drivers as they make that leap. The cars are pretty close. It's still a big learning curve, but not nearly as big as it used to be.
Robert McGinn is hanging it out there. New driver to the top of the charts, ladies and gentlemen, Parker Thompson.
Did you see him coming through 11?
On it.
Oh, my gosh. He's back in, stepping out. He's doing a heck of a job, really pushing a driver that swept last year.
Yep.
And doing a really good job this year. I mean, this I think, the time for this exclusive Autosport team, but more so Parker Thompson to really shine.
A couple of podium finishes here would be huge for him. Here comes the number 10 of Harrison Scott. He's only done one lap so far. In my mind, I'm wondering whether or not he thinks he's trying to save some tires. Remember, they only get 4 sets of tires for the 5 sessions. Do you want fresh rubber for the race? Do you want to scuff a set? He did 1 lap. Maybe they went out and scuffed a set of tires, and they'll save those for the race. Again, only 4 sets of fresh Cooper tires, so they got to kind of figure out when they're going to use them. They were able to start the practice session this morning on a carryover set of tires from Road America. So a set of tires that they would have had at the Road America race, they could use those this morning. And I guarantee you no one put fresh rubber on this morning on a dirty racetrack. So essentially 4 sessions, 2 qualifying runs, 2 races, 4 sets of tires. It's up to you how you want to use those tires.
Stingray Robb making his way back onto the circuit. He currently sits provisionally P2. Parker Thompson, quick, minute 8:22.82. Then Robb, VK, Guzman, and Oliver Askew rounding out the top 5 provisionally in this qualifying session, race number 1 for the Pro Mazda Series.
6.5 minutes remaining in qualifying. Thompson on top, as Michael had said. We're going to keep an eye on the number 10 of Harrison Scott, the RP Motorsports racing pilot. 2 times the winner this year, once on the road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Victorious as well at Barber Motorsports Park in Birmingham, Alabama. He is an impressive young driver. Harrison Scott dominated the Euro Formula Open Series last year overseas. Thrilled to have both Harrison and RP Motorsports Racing, a brand new team here in Pro Mazda. That Italian squad setting up shop in Chicago, Illinois. And they have been good out of the box. A couple of wins for that team. They like what they're doing here on the road to Indy, considering a move to Indy Lights. I'm not sure what's going to happen next year, but they're considering adding an Indy Lights team to their program as well. That's RP Motorsport Racing.
It'll be interesting to see what Harrison Scott can muster this lap. Certainly being 13th, not the place he wants to be. He talked about the situation potentially with what they were wanting to do with the tires. He will be coming around that timing and scoring line here momentarily. Expect him to at least get into the top 7 or 8 and then potentially get into the top 5. We'll see Harrison Scott as he crosses timing and scoring to see how he's able to fare.
So I asked Harrison, I said, here, that's his teammate rolling through. Harrison Scott goes to P9 on his outlap, 9th on his outlap, a 110.047. I said to Harrison, do you have any street circuit experience other than St. Petersburg, start of the year? He goes, big sideways move for Oliver Askew coming out of turn number 11. He was all crossed up. What a tough place coming through there. He was on the throttle, but back to Harrison Scott. I said, what other experience have you had? Well, I ran Monaco. Oh, all right. right.
Well, okay.
All right.
Well, there's that.
In Formula Renault.
Right.
He's driven Monaco. That's a pretty well-known street circuit,
Yeah.
I think.
I've seen it once or twice. Wow.
But not a lot of time on the straight circuit. He'll be ready to push him his way forward. But I'm telling you, Michael, a couple of guys coming through turn number 11, crossing it up. Parker Thompson drifting up through here as well. Rinus VeeKay to the top. Rinus VeeKay goes to P1. A shorter 20-minute session here. I wondered if we'd see anybody else come in to put fresh tires on halfway through. It seems like no. They're all going to run just the one session here. Rinus VeeKay goes over a tenth faster. Parker Thompson now in the second spot. Stingray Robb in third. David Malukas in fourth. Robert McGinnis rounding out your fast five. I love this. 4 different teams in the top 5. VeeKay for Juncos. Thompson for Exclusive Autosport. Stingray Robb for Team Pelfrey. David Malukas for BN Racing, and Robert McGinnis puts 2 Juncos drivers in the top 5. This is the competition level in Pro Mazda this year. Such great competition, such great drivers.
So talk us through Harrison Scott. That best lap of a minute 10, 0478. Last time, minute 16, potentially starting on the inside of row number 5. He's got maybe 2 more laps to get her done.
You know, looking at some of these drivers, Rinus went quicker on lap number 15. These tires keep getting better and better. I would think if he does a 116, that means he got caught up with somebody slower and got off the throttle, gave himself about 6 seconds gap so that he can get back at it again. He'll spool it up. And he's a veteran driver, so he'll do that in the back part of the racetrack. So when he comes out at turn 8, he's right back on the throttle, so he makes sure he has as much as he can. You've got to maximize your tires to their absolute nth in terms of power. Keep your eye on Harrison Scott. He'll put a couple of good ones down here pretty soon. That's Malukas rolling out of 11 here.
Harrison
David Malukas currently in the P1 spot. He goes to the top. Malukas, I just said he was rolling. David Malukas, winner of both main events at Road America 2 weeks ago. Yeah, Scott back down to a 109.5, turned his best lap.
Yeah, 109, but everybody else is running 108. Malukas almost eclipsing the 108 mark. Sub 108, that'd be huge.
Right now, he is over 2.5 seconds faster than the existing track record. David Malukas on top by 0.05 of a second over Rinus VeeKay. That's your current provisional front row in the category. Parker Thompson in third, Stingray Robb in the 4th spot. Robert McGinnis running now 5th. 6th is Andres Gutierrez. 7th is Raul Guzman. 8th, Oliver Askew. 9th, Harrison Scott. And 10th, the young Canadian, Antonio Serravalle. Just 2 minutes remaining here before we get set to go.
So really, potentially for some of the drivers, 1 lap. Some may get 2 finishing this one and then getting an additional lap in this qualifying session. Serravalle making his way down the front straightaway. He's currently provisionally on the outside of row number 5. Malukas no better than his last time by, although a 108.3049. Malukas, VeeKay, Thompson. Now Rinus VeeKay to the top. Great lap for Rinus.
You know, awesome for Rinus. He does a 107.9, lowering the track record yet again. Harrison Scott last time by a 110. No, driver into the wall. Driver into the wall. That's the number 2.
Rinus VeeKay.
VeeKay tags the wall. He's going to bring the red flag out here if he can't get back.
No.
If he does, he'll lose his fast lap. He's going to try to limp this thing back here with just a minute remaining.
Bent that rear right suspension, that right rear tire off camber.
So coming out of turn number 11 on the throttle, the first driver to hit the wall here.
He just did his best lap.
Just laid down a 107.973 fast lap by 0.07 of a second over David Malukas. He's going to try to get out of the way. He's just getting down to turn number 1. We'll pull off the end of the straightaway.
He'll do that little runoff section. And
wise move for him.
Yeah.
If he brings, if that car would have more damage, let's say he has to come to a stop here and they bring the red flag out. If you cause a red flag, you lose at least your fast lap of the race. That would have dropped him down. Remember, fast lap, pole, Michael, 1 bonus point. These championships are so close, you cannot leave anything out there. So 1 bonus point for Rinus VeeKay, and he was able to get through Prince's Gates. And in the runoff that goes around, excellent job for Rinus. And to be honest, unbelievably lucky as well.
Oh, and he hits any harder, and that car's wadded up.
Totally.
And then it's a red flag, and then, that's just as you said, just laid the provisional pole and could easily have lost that.
So here we go. Checker flag has flown. The time limit is done for Pro Mazda. Does anybody have anything for Rinus VeeKay on the final lap? 107.973 for Rinus VeeKay, the young Dutch pilot.
Parker Thompson, no.
Yeah, no, Parker doesn't get the job done. He'll be P3 inside of row number 2 to start for him thus far, provisionally. David Malukas in the 79, currently P2. Harrison Scott still on the racetrack in the number 10 for RP Motorsports Racing, but he has not been able to go any quicker. A 109.55 his best. Coming through turn number 5. Again, the RP Motorsports drivers are both out there still. No, I believe one already in. Guzman's already in. Gutierrez, Askew, and Scott still out on the racetrack. They're coming across. Harrison Scott.
No better.
He goes quicker. Well, he went quicker but didn't move.
Didn't move. Right.
109.2, still 1.2 seconds off. They got to find some speed. Guzman's his teammate.
So
driver from Mexico in the 27. P is only his second race weekend here in Pro Mazda. P6, pretty good for Raul Guzman.
Yep, nobody able to go quicker, though. And for Rinus VK, maybe the luck of the potential Irish for that young man.
Well, it's a green car.
Right.
It's a green
so
car,
there you go.
Of course. The Colombian team from Ricardo Juncos.
Right.
And Rinus VK from the Netherlands. I'm not sure how much Irish is in there.
I don't think a lot.
It's a green car. Let's just go with that.
That's how we'll tie that all together with a nice little bow.
So Rinus VK lays down a 107.973. The new track record here in the Pro Mazda category, eclipsing, in fact, blowing away the record that was set back in 2016 by Aaron Telitz.
And we could even break it again. We still have another opportunity.
This is it this afternoon. We're not even done. The track is going to be significantly different as well. Temperatures are pretty good right now. The track's getting some grip. I don't think it's going to be that much better. So a 107.973 for Rinus VK. David Malukas back by just 700ths of a second. There's your front row. Race winners this year already. Rinus VK sweeping the weekend at the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. David Malukas coming off a sweep of the weekend at Road America just 2 weeks ago. Parker Thompson, your point leader, the young Canadian, starting in the third spot alongside a great young American driver, Stingray Robb, in the number 82. Robert McGinnis and Raul Guzman will be on row number 3. Andres Gutierrez and Oliver Askew on row 4. Harrison Scott alongside Antonio Saravalli on row number 5. Chris Wright will start 11th. Carlos Cunha, an issue again, I believe. He only got 4 laps in. He'll start 12th. Charles Finelli from Fat Boy Racing in 13th, and Nikita Listoshkin, no time. As we had detailed earlier, he'll start on the outside of row number 7. Nikita will be looking to get back on the racetrack for qualifying for race number 2. But when we go racing on Saturday for race 1, it'll be a full field in front of him. Nikita Listoshkin starting on the very final row of this 14-car grid.
You know, you talk about this new car, with the exception of Charles Finelli and Nikita Listoshkin, who did not qualify because of the incident earlier this morning. Every one of those 12 cars broke the track record. Yeah. That's something.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And again, this is the second rung of the Mazda Road to Indy. So you look at a number of these drivers who have worked their way up and through the ranks. Rinus VK, David Malukas, Parker Thompson, all running last year in USF 2000, as did Robert McGinnis, Andres Gutierrez, Oliver Askew, champion last year in USF 2000. That's what this series and this Mazda Road to Indy presented by Cooper Tires is all about, Michael. Developing these young drivers, getting them ready to take that next step towards the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Thanks for coming up here. It's a good time.
I appreciate it, buddy.
Always qualifying good to see session. You. Rinus VK on the pole for race number 1. David Malukas, Parker Thompson, Stingray Robb make up the first 2 rows. Our thanks to Rob Howden, the voice of this Mazda Road to Indy program. We will see him back here a little bit later on this afternoon, and we thank him for coming up and visiting us in the public address booth. Well, race fans, 3 Canadians, Zachary Clayman DeMello, Robert Wickens, and, of course, James Hinchcliffe, part of the contingent of the Verizon IndyCar Series. We will see the stars and the cars momentarily. The very first practice session for the Verizon IndyCar Series, that's coming up next. It's day number 1 of the Honda Indy Toronto.
Yes, we are. Yeah, we test on Tuesday at Mid-Ohio and weekend off, and then go back there for the race there. So it's a track that's been kind to me in the past. That was my first win in North America in 2014 in Indy Lights. So not that we're expecting to go and do that this weekend, but hopefully when we get there, we know we can be fast and honestly just deliver a good weekend.
I know, and as the season has progressed, we've talked to drivers once we get to a race weekend, and boy, those that haven't tested at a track are really scratching their head right out of the box. So this is huge for you guys.
Honestly, getting to do the tests there before the race is actually massive. And again, it just allows me to get to the track, get familiar with the car, the circuit again itself. I've not been to Mid-Ohio in a few years. Allows the team and all the guys working on the car, just to get back into that rhythm. it's Michael's home race, so a lot of positive and good things for us there. And if we were going to choose another weekend that we were going to be good, obviously you want to be good at all of them, but a few of them have a bit more of a special atmosphere, and that's certainly one of it for the Meyershank Racing team.
I was going to ask you, that's a big weekend for Michael, isn't it? It's a home race for him, essentially.
Oh yeah, it's a massive one for him. I mean, I went to when he had his sports car team racing there a few months ago,
right.
Just the turnout of people that he had for that, and honestly we're hoping that for the IndyCar race there we might have a few more, so this is a very, very big deal for him. I know he's very proud to be there this in a few weekends time.
That'll be cool.
So now the changes to the aero kit, the removal of downforce, putting more into the driver's stand, universally applauded during the off-season. Now all of a sudden, there are those that are saying, we need more downforce, need more downforce, need to bring some of that back. Where does Jack Harvey stand based upon, for instance, your experience at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
Honestly, I feel like that's kind of a lose-lose for anybody making that decision, because you take it away, they want it back, you give it to them, they want it to take away again. Personally, I just like driving the car, however it comes. I do think this year's car is a bit more challenging to drive, probably exposes your mechanical setup a little bit more. You can't just rely on the downforce to get through it. Honestly, I love driving both the cars. I do think this one's challenging, and especially when you're, on a street circuit like Toronto, where it's slippy, it's bumpy, there's so many concrete patches. It's just another thing then to worry about. So I think it just makes it extremely fun.
Let's go to Tony. You've got an update. You're in the 88 pit box with Connor Daly.
Yeah, guys, I'm just standing down here watching Connor Daly. He did his install lap, and he pulled back in. They've kind of done a rear to front whole systems check on the car. Started with the engine cover coming off. They did some work on the floor pan on both sides of Connor, and then they've just put the front wing back on, and they're adjusting all the bodywork and tightening it back up. But it's been fun to stand here. I'm about 6 feet away from Connor, and he's just been sitting in the car. You can see he's talking on the radio to the crew, but he's pulling the gloves tight. He's wiggling around still in the seat a little bit. I think you can tell that he just feels so good to be back in a race car. They've just fired the 88 back up. They're putting the umbrellas away. They've unplugged the radio, and Daly's getting ready to head back out. You can tell he's ready to have a fun weekend here in Toronto.
You and I talked on the way over to the booth before the show about how much we both love the city. But you drove up, as did I, yesterday. But let's talk a little bit about this racetrack. You've competed here a few times in Indy Lights. What do you like so much about Toronto and the course from a competitive standpoint?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the track itself does pose, so many challenges. It is bumpy. That being said, they've just repaved the front straight, which honestly, that bit before breaking into turn one was so bumpy. Your head would shake, and you could go down there and actually watch all the cars even bounce around there. It's I know people say this a lot, it's very much a driver's track. Again, those concrete patches, they don't grip up very little, or very little if they don't at all. They don't grip up all weekend, so you get to the concrete patch, and whatever you're doing before you get there, you just do it worse, and it's right at the apex of all the corners, so I think that combination of trying to, push as hard as you can on what is already, a high-risk kind of track because it's a street circuit, plus the added effect of all these concrete patches, just watching Zach there have a bit of a moment in turn 8, it's just a driver's track, it's a ultimate hustle kind of track with high risk, scenarios potentially.
We saw Robert Wickens with full lock also out on the course. So it's we had you in the booth a couple of weeks ago. We talked about this. Some drivers, I remember once upon a time, someone told me that was part of the crew that Rubens Barrichello, for one, when the couple of years the year he spent in the Verizon IndyCar series, he would go out and take just a full-blown lap and then want to know where he was the slowest. And then for the rest of that session, he would attack that corner and get better at that corner. Is that possible, or you just need to try to find balance in a place like Toronto?
I would say the first half of the session anyway, I would try to just get a rhythm and, try and get up to speed and feel comfortable and confident. The second half of the session, quite often I would radio into my team and say, okay, which corners are we not very good at? Because even if you're quickest, there's still going to be somewhere you can improve. The interesting thing about Toronto is in a lot of the tracks, in a lot of corners where you find a lot of the time here is on the brakes, but it's such high risk. That being said, they do have some runoff, so I would be I'd be expecting to see quite a few people turn 1, turn 3, turn 8 be in that runoff at some point as they start to push the limits of that braking zone.
I've always heard that turn 3 can be extremely tricky because that corner, probably more than any other on the course, offers the most pronounced transition from asphalt to concrete back to asphalt, and there's even some paint down there too on the approach, so a lot of factors can affect your grip in that corner.
Oh, big time, honestly. And again, you talk about having a concrete patch at exactly the wrong moment. I think turn 3 exposes your mechanical car because, you know, to be really fast, you need to be able to attack the brake, be efficient on the brake, slow the car down as much as you can, hope that the concrete's not going to affect you too badly. And it's a very strong exit there, so you're really asking a lot from the rear tyres and make sure you've got good traction. I think turn 3 is such a tricky corner, and I think if you want to go and watch the cars out there, it'll be quite quick to, it'll be quite easy, I should say, to see which cars, you know, are fast just purely on that corner, because I think it exposes the car the most.
If you can get alongside a car approaching turn 3, are you better to be outside of 3 or to the inside of 3?
I think the outside, honestly. Yeah, I would always try and go to the outside because, on the inside, if someone's on the outside, that because whatever happens before you get to the concrete patch happens whether it's on the inside or the outside. But if you're already closer to the wall on the outside, it's just a higher risk kind of scenario. I feel like you can cover there much easier from the inside because you just let the car wash up a little bit.
Right.
And it's just a safe way of protecting.
You go uphill, and there's that little kink in 4, and then you've got that big pronounced left-hander in 5. If you can get, it would seem to me like if you can get to the outside of 3, you almost pinch the car next to you into a situation where they got to let up, right?
You can do.
Yeah,
I think you definitely can do. You see that. It's a lot of respect between drivers when you get to that point because people might not think it, but that kink in turn 4, it's a pretty aggressive little kink sometimes,
right,
especially if you've got issues. So then having somebody right next to you, I mean, you know about it, and you put a lot of trust in that person on your left or your right-hand side.
Right. Yeah, it's fun to watch that area, that race course.
He's stepped out of the race car. He's back on the pit box, though, wearing the owner's hat this weekend. Talking about Ed Carpenter, Nick Yeoman's caught up with him.
That's right, on the pit box for Jordan King, and, of course, the co-owner for the car owner, I should say, for Spencer Pigot. Let's talk about Iowa. How impressed were you with the run for Spencer, his first career podium?
He did a good job. You know, I mean, he really drove a smart race in what was tough conditions and managed all of it very well. You know, I was really happy to see one of the cars on the podium, and especially for him to get a breakthrough run. You know, he needed that. Hopefully we'll be able to carry the momentum over to this weekend.
Now, you never like to spin in the last 10 laps of a race, but it's not lost on you how much that benefited your driver, right?
Yeah, I mean, it helped Spencer, helped Takuma. You know, I lost a spot, but definitely could have been a lot worse.
Final thing, as we ease into the final third of the season, what's your thoughts on Jordan King and the evaluation process for the 20 group?
I think he's doing a good job. You know, kind of like Spencer, you know, they both had good runs. Hopefully we'll be able to turn them into results this weekend.
All right, we'll let Ed Carpenter get back to work as it appears like Jordan King may be headed to pit lane here momentarily. But, Mark, not to be lost. I mean, it was a great run by James Hinchcliffe to pick up the win, but certainly not to be outdone. A fantastic run for Spencer Pigot, career-best second-place finish in Iowa 1 week ago.
And I think, Jack Harvey, we're seeing the benefits. Now, Spencer, obviously, in the car last year, just on the road and street courses, but he's starting to get, we talked about that rhythm of being in the car each and every week.
Oh, definitely. I think Iowa was a really great race for Spencer. He drove a fantastic race. He was smart, he was sensible, and he looked like a veteran driver and, you know, took a career best and, you know, thoroughly deserved it. I think Ed is doing a great thing. I think, honestly, they're getting people in the car on the straight and the road courses, and then when he feels like they're ready, they get to the ovals. And I mean, Spencer's got a little bit of oval experience from Indy Lights and the 500 and whatnot, but if I was Spencer, I'd be taking Ed out for a steak dinner at some point, saying thanks for sticking with it for 2 years now, nearly.
So preparations continue for Sunday's race. Ed Jones currently atop the chart. Rossi, Wickens, Hunter Ray, Sato the top 5. Kanaan, Dixon, Pagano, Ray Hall, and Newgarden. Everyone has turned at least a handful of laps here on the streets of Toronto.
Firestone presents Legendary Drives. The scariest thing in sports is a left turn, taking it over 220 miles an hour. Turn 1 at the Indy 500 demands everything a tire's got, putting 2.5 Gs on them for 4 seconds. Once it's over, they only have to do it 199 more times. And if Firestone tires are so dependable they can handle turn 1, they'll handle any turn you need to make. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone, the tire that drives IndyCar legends.
Plan your racing road trip to St. Louis for Verizon IndyCar Series weekend at Gateway Motorsports Park. Coors Light Pole Night on Friday features qualifying in the first ever appearance by the NASCAR K&N Pro Series. Saturday is action-packed all day long with the Rumble Before the Roar pre-race party and the amazing Bommarito Automotive Group 500. Get your tickets now at GatewayMSP.com. August 24th and 25th. Brought to you in part by the Illinois Self Tourism and the Office of Illinois Tourism. The last oval race of 2018 will be incredible. The party at Gateway will be spectacular.
From the Firestone broadcast booth in Toronto, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Alexander Rossi goes to P1. Jones, Dixon, Hunter-Ray, Rahal the top 5. Sato, Kanaan, Andretti, Wickens, and Power the top 10. Pagenaud, Newgarden, Pickett, Kimball, and Lace through 15th. Then Veach, Chilton, Binder, King, and Bourdais through 20th. Clayman DeMello, Daly in the 88 this weekend, and James Hinchcliffe complete the 23 cars entered this weekend. Okay, Jack, it's been interesting to me. First of all, I love the qualifying format on road and street courses. I think the knockout qualifying of the Firestone Fast Six is Ryan Hunter-Ray visits the outside retaining wall as he comes off of turn number 3. Not the first to do that, won't be the last this weekend for sure. But Jack, it's interesting as our pit guys talk to drivers. Those that don't get out of round 1 and 2 are almost despondent. However, the optimism grows as the session progresses, and we've even seen, speaking of Connor Daly, when he ran for Dale Coyne, that Dale's used the philosophy, let's just get into the round of 12. Let's manage reds throughout the weekend, get into the round of 12. There's no question that changes your perception and your perspective preparing for the race.
Yeah, just looking at Ryan, I mean, I think he whitewalled there. I mean, It looks exactly like he did, and it does. I mean, I think based off of how your practice session goes, you kind of head into it actually just come into the pits as well.
Yep.
Based off of practice, you start to get a good feeling of where you think you may be, in qualifying, and certainly our goal every weekend, or what we aim to, what we would class as a good weekend, would be to get into the top 12, and then I think at that point you do try and manage the reds the best you can. And the thing is, if you just get into the top 12, you don't know what's going to happen. The opportunity to then break into the Fast Six, it's there, but you have to be there in order to take the opportunities. So the goal for everybody, of course, but I think sometimes you see people sometimes go 2 sets of reds, or they go 1 set of blacks and then reds. It's interesting to see how people use that tyre strategy for qualifying on the race.
More on that in just a moment, but first Ryan Hunter-Ray has returned to pit road, and Nick Yeoman is there.
Yep, that DHL Honda kind of wobbled back to pit lane. The crew pouring over the left rear right now. They took that left rear tire off, and as Jack talked about it, definitely whitewalled it, rubbed the Firestone writing off the outside of the tire, and now the team is kind of taking apart the rear end housing to look to see if any of those A-arms and control arms might be bent. It does look like, there is a pretty significant suspension piece connected to that rear end housing that is bent upwards for Ryan Hunter-Ray. So I imagine this 28 car probably going to sit on pit lane for a little while. Didn't look like he made any contact with the left front. In fact, there's nobody looking at that left front tire, but it is left rear suspension damage for Ryan Hunter-Ray and that DHL Honda, guys.
How heavily is the driver involved in terms of planning what the focus and direction is for each session throughout the course of the weekend? The novice might think you're just out there running laps, trying to go as fast as you can, but there's a fair amount of planning done before you get here. How much is a driver involved in that process?
Oh, massively. Honestly, I think everybody as a team comes together, and you have your goals for the session in terms of what you want to try driving-wise. If there's different driving lines you want to take. Oh, it looks like we've got somebody in the runoff there.
Yep, that's the 19 of Zachary Clayman DeMello running here in front of his home country of Canada. He gets into that runoff area. It looks like turn number 3. So Zachary Clayman DeMello well off of turn number 3, but looks like he might have made some contact there with the left front of that race car. And he's well out of harm's way. Past the tire barrier, past the apex of that turn. So we'll keep an eye on that. Zachary Clayman DeMello, probably just a local flag in that area, if one at all, since he's well into the runoff. It looks like they're getting him on the quick, Jack, getting him going in the right direction. Jack, I'm out on it. It doesn't look like a lot of damage on that car. Maybe just light contact.
Honestly, I couldn't tell if it was that or if it was just the angle of the camera off of one of the banners on the catch fencing honestly. I couldn't really get a good view of it, but
yeah, he looks like he got back under full speed pretty quickly. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. Get an update on Zachary Clayman DeMello when he arrives. So again, back to strategic planning for the course of the weekend.
Yeah, I think driver and team together discuss the goals of the session, basically, whether it's setup related, if it's driving related. Often it's, of course, both. I guess some of it depends. A lot of it, once you've done your run on Reds after practice 2, I think at that point you go into practice 3 and you really know what exactly you're going to be targeted, and it gives you a very good clear path for practice 3 and for qualifying and exactly what direction you want to go. I think before the weekend, I think you have to get the first session kind of out of the way, see what you've got, settle into the weekend, and then honestly try and progress from there wherever that starting point is.
So last weekend, pretty daunting because you had one practice session, then you went qualifying. I mean, that's a pretty quick turnaround.
Oh, mate, it's massive turnaround when it's something like that. It's tough for everybody, and that's when you hope that you just unload straight off the truck, straight onto the track, and you're fast. Honestly, that's when that would be a dream scenario in that situation, because when you've got no time to fix it, you just go with the best you've got, and sometimes that's a terrible feeling.
The day first, interesting to note, if we go back and spend a few more moments on Iowa, as Scott Dixon now goes to P1, followed by Marco, Rossi, Ray Hall, and Ed Jones. It was just amazing to me to see some of the championship contenders and how quickly some of them went a lap or two down to that race. I mean, we got into traffic, I think, about 10 to 15 laps into that race, and there was at one point where I think only the top 5 happened to be on the lead lap at the time, at about the midway point of the race.
I tell you, it was so much fun to watch that race play out, and I would love to be the guy that was figuring this out, but it was over 900 passes during the course of that event on Sunday, and part of that, I mean, that's not a made-up number. That's not some tricked-up number. There were that many. Part of that was due to the layout of the track and the fact that there were 2 racing grooves. Imagine if there were 2 grooves at a track like Phoenix, ISM Raceway. We could have potentially that sort of same scenario there. But it was quick, fun to watch, and can't wait to go back again next year. Although I'm hearing now that it might be back to a Saturday night race, which might make you happy. Is that?
I think you could go to Vegas with those odds as it stands right now. I think you would. I think you would like the end result, and I mean that's Saturday night short track racing. Let's face it, David Hyatt, the president, said that there are more racetracks per square mile per capita in the state of Iowa than any other state in the country. So that is Saturday night short track heaven, if you will. And we saw some massive crowds there when it was on a Saturday night prior to. There's a lot of advantages to it. It builds you in a rain date for sure. Right. Allows people from the Midwest, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Kentucky an opportunity to get there and still be able to get back and get to work on Monday. Yep. So, I think a lot of folks would universally applaud that move. And plus, not to mention the fact our cars look very, very cool under the lights, for sure.
Just ask the folks at Gateway.
Yeah, contact by Alexander Rossi in the 27, but he was able to get back underway, and but we can see that certainly this place is throwing a bit of a curveball to some very experienced drivers, as you alluded to earlier.
Always. The thing is, when you've got the experience, I think the difference is you just go out and attack a little bit harder because you know what to expect. The rookies don't know what to expect and sometimes make a mistake for that reason. The veterans go out and they know what to expect, but they're just driving to the limit that much. I actually thought I saw it. It looked like he was crabbing a little bit on the front straight, and now we know why. But such a fine line between white walling the tyre and actually doing damage. So. Not exactly sure where we draw the line on that sometimes.
Toe links at a premium right now for Indy Radio Autosport, man.
Yeah, the 27 machine comes to pit road, and Nick Yeoman, you've probably been a little busier talking about bumps with the wall than you'd like to be at this point.
Yeah, this has not been a great session so far for Andretti Autosport. It was the left rear damage for Ryan Hunter-Ray. This time for Alexander Rossi, it appears to be the right rear. In fact, that right rear tire looked like it was pushed in a couple extra inches as he caught the side of that wall pretty severely. severe. As those joining us online are getting to see a replay, it was right there at pit exit. He caught the right rear tire. So they've got both rear tires off. They're going to look at that rear end housing. And again, another situation where you got a white-walled tire, a right rear for Alexander Rossi, as they will look for bent suspension pieces. We talked about Ryan Hunter-Reay, who was caught up in an incident earlier. That DHL car still sits on pit lane. So not been a great opening session so far, Mark Janes, for the Andretti boys.
And Tony Laporta, we had an issue involving Zachary Clayman DeMello. Any damage on that race car, or did he just overshoot turn 3?
Yeah, guys, I think he just overshot the corner, honestly, and hit that runoff room because he's sitting in the box right now. The team called him on the radio for fuel. They're doing a once-over. They've probably got 7 guys over the wall right now taking a look at it, but they're really just, they're not going to work on anything. No body work has even come off of the car yet. They're spending a little bit of time at the right rear, but honestly, they're wiping off suspension pieces, and doesn't seem to be any significant damage of note. On the 19 right now, they're just filling it up, and I think getting ready to take another shot at it here in practice number 1.
Interesting to note, Dave, that over the course of time, we have seen this initial practice session at a race weekend. Sometimes on these road and street courses, we don't have a lot of takers right away. That's not the case today. Almost, Dave, from the time the green flag flew. I mean, we're getting teams with a lot of laps, and I think the fewest have been turned in by Will Power at 6, but some are as high as 15 to 17 at this point.
Yeah, the folks at Firestone, they'll provide an extra set of tires for the rookies and those 10th on back in points. And some of those guys up front, Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, they waited a little bit at the beginning to take to this road course. 11 turn, 1.7 miles in length here in the streets of Toronto. 34th time that IndyCar has been coming here. Of course, you go back, Mark Janes, very first time was back in 1986. A guy by the name of Bobby Rahal won here on the streets of Toronto, and worked out pretty well for Bobby as continued his career on. Now, of course, he's on the pit box for Takuma Sato. Sato had a nice run at Iowa last week as well. So I love coming to this area. Each and every time you forget about how much fun it is, a melting pot of different cultures from around the world. And boy, I tell you what, they love their IndyCar racing. 3 Canadians in this race. You throw in DeMello, obviously Robert Wickens, and James Hinchcliffe. First time we've had 3 Canadians in this race since, I believe, 2011.
Yeah, it's been a long time for sure, and much like Al Jr. at Long Beach, I think Michael Andretti once upon a time got mail in victory lane here. 7 wins at Toronto, and just incredible his dominance here, and scores of podium finishes other than those wins, as we see the number 20 machine bringing out the red flag. That's rookie Jordan King. He had completed 14 laps and was 21st quick. So while he is retrieved by the AMR IndyCar safety team, we'll take a break and be right back to Toronto.
Firestone presents Legendary Drives. It was the 1969 Indy 500 when Mario Andretti's crew couldn't get his right rear tire off. He had no choice but to drive on it the whole race, still finishing with a checkered flag and a drink of milk. Now that's legendary. And if Firestone tires are so dependable they can take Mario 500 grueling IndyCar miles, just imagine how far they'll take you. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone, the tire that drives IndyCar legends.
Plan your racing road trip to St. Louis for Verizon IndyCar Series weekend at Gateway Motorsports Park. Coors Light Pole Night on Friday features qualifying in the first ever appearance by the NASCAR K&N Pro Series. Saturday is action-packed all day long with the Rumble Before the Roar pre-race party and the amazing Bommarito Automotive Group 500. Get your tickets now at GatewayMSP.com. August 24th and 25th. Brought to you in part by the Illinois Self-Tourism and the Office of Illinois Tourism. The last oval race of 2018 will be incredible. The party at Gateway will be spectacular.
From the Firestone broadcast booth in Toronto, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
A couple of good parties before we get to Gateway, but yeah, you might as well plan to be there now. We've got the party on the streets of Toronto this weekend, and then we go to the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course on the 29th. August 19th, we're at Pocono, and then follow that up Gateway on the 25th. And Jack, we had a chance during the break to look at James Hinchcliffe doing a bit of slipping and slide around the racetrack.
Oh, we did, but I know, the whole 5 team and SPM on a whole, really, they had a fantastic weekend at Iowa, obviously getting the win.
Yeah.
But what's more than that is you off a winning weekend straight into your home race. That's more than a momentum builder. That is such a special feeling for James. And Robbie obviously had a fantastic Iowa as well. 2 top 5s for the team. To come into your home track is, honestly, is amazing with that level of momentum. And I know the guys will be doing everything they can to have a good weekend in front of their home.
Jack, you probably got a good feel for this, but given what Hinch went through during the month of May in the Indianapolis 500 and not being able to qualify for that race, and to bounce back at an oval like Iowa and for him to win, what was is there something special there between the two?
Oh, absolutely. I saw that James said that winning at Iowa wouldn't stop people talking about Indy, which I'm sure is probably true, but certainly I hope he takes a lot of, solace and confidence from it, because we all know what a great oval racer he is.
Yeah.
Indy was a perfect storm of imperfect events that happened for him, and honestly, I thought he handled what happened like a champ, and honestly, I was
very classy.
He was, and I was absolutely devastated for him, for the team, and we share an engineering room, and you could see, I didn't know what to say to him, honestly, apart from just keep going, I guess. So I think, honestly, for him, personally for him, I hope it does put to bed, some of those little things that I'm sure still, obviously we were talking about it now, from Indy to go out and win it on oval again this year. I think hopefully
till next May anyway.
Until next May,
right? Exactly.
It'll come back up then for sure. Back-to-back third place finishes here, Jack, for James Hinchcliffe. And I remember, and Dave, you do too, and I'm sure you do, Jack, when Graham Rahal won at Mid-Ohio, the track that he used to ride around when he was a kid on a bicycle. Hinch has been at this race every year since he was a year and a half. And outside of Indy, this has got to be his bucket list win, I think. Don't you?
I think any driver's home track outside of Indy is the one you want to get done. I think if you said to James, give us a list of races that if you could choose across the year, I would guess it would go the Indy 500, and then winning on the streets of Toronto. There's something extra special winning in front of your home crowd. I know James is from Toronto, so I'm sure he's got a lot of friends and a lot of people know him here. And honestly, a lot of people here are just wishing him, the best of luck this weekend, hoping that he brings the race and brings a trophy home from it.
Here's the crazy thing. You think about all the great Canadians that have driven in this race. The only one that's actually won is Paul Tracy.
Really?
Yeah. I think of the Carpentiers, Taglianis, Villeneuve. None of them have been able to pick up a W here outside of Paul Tracy, who did it a couple times.
Interesting stat for sure. Let's get an update on the 20 of Jordan King from Nick Yeoman.
Yeah, that car was towed back to pit lane, Mark Janes. No damage on that car. The report is they simply ran Jordan King out of fuel. So he's back on pit lane. They're fueling that car up, and everything seems good to go for the rookie from England.
Interesting. We'll call it interesting that he ran out of fuel. So Scott Dixon is P1. Andretti, Rossi, Rahal, Newgarden, Jones, Wickens, Veach, Bourdais, Hunter Ray, the top 10. Piggott, Sato, Kanaan, Pagano, and Chilton through 15th. Laced, Power, Hinch, Clayman, DeMello, and Kimball to the top 20. And then King, Renee Binder, and Connor Daly in the 88. And again, session by session, Jack, the goal has to be simply for Connor to get comfortable again in the race car and familiarize himself with the team and the lingo and the setup on the race car.
You're absolutely right with all of that. I think the first session, especially for all the guys, but Connor in particular today, is just trying to be getting familiar with the team. Brand new team for him, brand new car. He has been to the track, so at least that's something for him. But I think the goal for everybody in session one is usually just to, this is where you get your foundation for the weekend on, and everything you do is based off of practice one, going to be particularly important for him today. But actually interesting, so I did see Ryan Hunter-Reay and Alexander Rossi both back out on track, so whatever damage they did have, they've got it fixed and they're circulating again.
So I think we had this conversation with you a couple of weeks ago at Road America with the three visitors. We've heard Ed Jones, we've heard Max Chilton, we've heard Zach Veach talk about the similarities between the newest configuration of the Indy Lights car and this new package with the Verizon IndyCar series. So what is similar about those two?
I think honestly the way the Indy Lights car behaves on on the brakes, off the brake, and into the corner certainly feels very similar to this new Indy car. You know, it's moving around a lot at the rear. The front can sometimes be positive in that particular phase of the corner, and you're seeing it already today. The guys are, you know, starting to get quite a lot of oversteer on the brakes and into the corner. Separate problems actually in the corner, but I think you're seeing that, and certainly I'm feeling pretty happy that we managed to do Indy Lights, because that was quite good preparation for moving into a category which has more horsepower, still has more downforce, but in terms of mechanical feeling in the car, a pretty mechanical similar thing.
And again, it was massive in terms of development, because, you know, the conversation we had with you years ago in the Transporter, your first year in Indy Lights, when the move was made to the engine and chassis configuration, they now have an Indy Lights. At that time, your first year, there was nothing to be gained by spending more than 1 year in Indy Lights. But now that you have this new chassis and engine setup, it makes sense, I think. Now, does it not?
Yes, I'd definitely be more inclined to agree with that than disagree with it. I think the old Indy Lights car was, you know, kind of heavy, a little bit slow. But the new car, honestly, is just a lot closer to what IndyCar is now. Frankly, you know, like I said a minute ago, the way the car does behave on the brakes. Honestly, I think how the racing is playing out right now as well on the ovals for Indy Lights, I think all of it is good preparation. So I think Indy Lights have made themselves a very relevant car again for, hopefully, if you come to North America, you go through the Mazda Road to Indy program and ladder. The end result, if you're competitive in Indy Lights, you're confident that you'll be competitive in IndyCar as well.
Our longtime driver analyst, again, the race strategist for Carlin Racing, and Charlie Kimball, the 23 car. Tony, you've caught up with Davey Hamilton.
Davey, you guys just left the box after that red flag. A little bit of work on the front end. What's Charlie saying about the car right now early on in practice one?
Yeah, you know, we're not too far. The car's actually fairly comfortable right now. Just, you know, track's it's a lot better than it's been in the past. Still a few bumps, so that we're just trying to get the car to go over a little bit smoother. So, you know, good start. The track's going to get a lot faster as we go here, so just kind of feeling our way through it.
All right, thanks so much, Davey. Again, that's Davey Hamilton on the 23. Charlie Kimball spent a little bit of extra time in the box after the red flag was lifted, guys, but he's back on track right now, and Davey seems to think the track's going to come to them as the weekend progresses here in Toronto.
Well, the Mazda Road to Indy on display this weekend, Jack, in addition to a couple of other series. So how much is this track going to grip up over the course of the weekend?
Oh, significantly. You know, this is a street course where people literally will drive their cars around again, and honestly, the more we've seen they just seem to find each other, don't they, at the minute? Yeah. They're just together just all the time. It's like you can't
do they know each other?
They're just always together on track. I don't know exactly what happens, and I'm sure this will be a talking point.
Oh, wow. Boy. Yeah.
I saw Robbie's finger go straight to the radio button there to probably call that in. But yeah, I think the track evolution is going to be big here, and it can change the setup of the car. And honestly, that's one of the things that you're also mindful of. You maybe don't want your best car, you know, in practice one, but if you're a little bit free, sometimes the grip's going to come to you. It's going to probably give you an ideal balance. So I think the key is sometimes not overreacting as the track gets quicker.
I guess we haven't discussed this much, but I don't remember the last time where any of our drivers expressed concern over the compatibility of tire compounds between the Cooper tires and the Indy Lights and the Firestone Firehawks. They seem to match up pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, every good experience I've had on tires, you know, I've raced on Cooper tires for a long time. Even when I was in Europe doing Formula 3, I raced on Cooper tires, and I think honestly the transition from those into Firestones have been fantastic. I actually never drove on the Firestone when they were in Indy Lights, but you know, had great experience with them since I've been in the Verizon IndyCar series. So I think honestly, every major tire manufacturer that I've driven on, whether it's Coopers or whether it's Firestones, have honestly been fantastic, and honestly great to work with. You know, really great people there.
Boy, in the past, sometimes in the old IRL days, they'd run racetracks with things like modifieds and USAC cars. They said those rubbers aren't compatible. And you can certainly tell once you got out onto the race course. So with just a couple of minutes remaining in the session, I want to give you the schedule for the rest of this day. The Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tire will take to the track at 1:30 Eastern this afternoon. Then a final IndyCar Series practice session of the day at 2:30 this afternoon. So, Dave, first, there's going to be plenty of time for the debrief to get ready for that second session this afternoon.
Yeah, there'll be plenty of time for these guys. Almost Jack, you maybe can chime in on this. Sometimes you can have too much time to think about stuff, right? You can, all of a sudden you start chasing things that maybe aren't there, but there's plenty of time between the practice sessions to get things dialed in, and then back at it for a morning practice come tomorrow at 9:50 local time, and then qualifying tomorrow afternoon, and then knockout-style qualifying, which is always one of the great shows of every weekend, be it the street courses or the road courses, and IndyCar knockout qualifying here tomorrow.
It's interesting to note, Jack, when you have that final practice session before you go qualifying, sometimes they have a tendency to throw something in a car in the search for just a little more speed, and what ends up being the wrong decision. That's a difficult set of circumstances, huh?
Oh, absolutely. It's so easy to tip these cars over the edge because everybody's pushing so hard all the time to find that maximal performance. What might seem like a real tiny change, can be enough just to completely tip it over. So then you spend a bit of the session trying to undo it. The other interesting thing is, what do you spend most of the practice session through, one run on reds, maybe in practice 2. You do practice 3 on blacks, but then you're also thinking about what your car's going to do on reds. So you're trying to keep all these things in the back of your mind and honestly just try and get as good an idea as possible ready for qualifying.
As we now approach just 30 seconds remaining in this session, Dixon, Rossi, Sato, Andretti laced. Wiggins, Pagano, Rahal, Bourdais, and Power the top 10. Would you expect to see that second session tomorrow or today, I should say, the 2:30 session be more of a qualifying sim, because those will be conditions similar to what we'll qualify under on Saturday?
Yes, definitely. Again, even those kind of things in the weekend and what you talk about before we actually get there, and I think it's going to be that's going to be a lot of time where people use that session honestly as a pre-mini qualifying. It's the time you're going to get reds again. That's going to be a really important session for all teams.
So again, Checkers comes out on this session, and it's been a relatively uneventful one for most teams, we should say, in terms of contact, with the exception of Andretti. Both Alexander Rossi and Ryan Hunter-Reay. We just saw Robert Wickens off of turn number 5 with a moment there. Dixon, Rahal, Rossi, Sato, Andretti, the top 5. Then Bourdais, Power, Hunter-Reay, Mateus Laced, and Robert Wickens through the top 10. Pagano 11th quick. Newgarden, Jones, Veach, and Kanaan. Pickett 16th quick. 17th Chilton. 18th Hinchcliffe. 19th Clayman DeMello. 20th quick is Connor Daly. 21st Jordan King, Charlie Kimball 22nd, Renee Binder 23rd, with Renee Binder back in the 32. Jordan King back in the 20 car this weekend. Dave First, we'll kind of echo what we talked about with Jack Harvey earlier. It's a bit of a challenge with this particular setup when you don't have the benefit of time week in and week out of the race car.
I'm just watching, looking at timing and scoring. How about Honda? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right now, top 6 for the folks at HPD. Will Power, the top Chevrolet, he is 7th quick. Graham Rahal he bumped up big time there. He had that last lap, so he had a nice little effort here this morning. The thing about this afternoon session, you throw in the qualifying sims and all that sort of thing. We expect to see some of these guys go out on the alternate red tires as well. So that always makes things just a tick more interesting in practice.
Oh, Dave, I just have a sneaking suspicion that regardless of what else has happened in this session, I think we're going to hear something on social media about what we just saw. I think for the 19th time now, the replay of Wickens and Rossi getting together on the racetrack.
Rinse and repeat. If you're, what was it? I forget which race it was. Wickens came out of the car and said, "It always seems to involve Alexander Rossi."
Well, let's face it, Dave. I know people, have long clamored for a rivalry. Well, I'll tell you, let's get Jack to weigh in on this. Doesn't it have to be a sustained number of incidents between two drivers over the course of 4 or 5 or 6 races? It's really tough to build a rivalry when there's separation. We'll get Jack's thoughts on that in just a minute. Let's go to pit road and Nick Yeoman.
Yeah, good top 10 in this session for rookie Mateus Laced. What do you think about this course here in Toronto? And you look a little worn out. It's a little hot out here, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's pretty hot out here. But man, this track is amazing. You know, I love this track. I love this place. It's a pleasure to be racing here again. And really good practice. I think finished 9th. I'm not sure, but you know, good stuff. And looking forward to the weekend now. I think we might have a great car here, and looking forward to a top 10 finish.
All right, nice job by the rookie from Brazil. He was correct. 9th quick, 2nd fastest Chevrolet for Mateus Laced.
So, Jack, your thoughts on building a rivalry here in the Verizon IndyCar Series and what that would take?
I mean, honestly, before you've actually tried to create one, usually they've already started happening. It could be a person you race with all the time, people you haven't, issues with often. I don't know. I mean, a rivalries can start out of almost nothing, frankly, and they can develop into something quite intense.
Let's go to pit road here from Alexander Rossi.
Yeah, guys, down here with Alex. Guys, just getting out with the session. Alex, tell me what happened over there with Robbie. Did you know he was coming up on you that quick?
You guys love to ask questions about Rob, don't you? Nothing happened, man. We're just all getting gaps. So.
All right, thanks so much. Alex Rossi, get out of the car here at the end of practice number 1.
All right, so Dixon, Rahal, Rossi, Sato, and Andretti, the top 5. Bourdais, Power Hunter, Ray, Laced, and Jones. So just that quick, huh? He pours water on that in a hurry. That's just kind of what we were talking about. So, Jack, again, happy to have you with us. I think you're going to join us for the first session tomorrow. Is that correct?
I hope so, yeah. That'll be great.
Yeah, we look forward to it. Thanks for the time, for sure. We know that you'll be busy in the paddock with your race team. And Dave First, thanks for your contributions, as always. And Nick Yeoman, Tony Laporta, great job on pit road, as always. Up next, Indy Lights practice session number 1 at 1:30 Eastern. The director of the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network is Wally Levitt. On-site engineering and production by Rick Evans. I'm Mark James. So long for now from the streets of Toronto.
This is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air.